How well do you know Diablo 4? Today we're going to be going over at least 5 game-changing things that I'm going to try to teach you here, and we're going to see how many of them you know. They're going to change the quality of life of your gameplay, and you're probably just going to have a much better time overall. So with that being said, let's get straight into the list. What's up guys, it is MurderInc talking about Diablo 4 on some pretty big tips and tricks for this game that not a lot of players do in fact know about, and some do. That's why I said at the start of this intro here, let's see how many people know everything I'm about to tell you. If you do, you are a god gamer and you have really done your testing well. So the first thing I want to talk about, and kind of why I said it's 5 but it's not really 5 because there are going to be some bonuses, is the Helltide. There are quite a few interesting interactions in the Helltide that I do want to go over. So the first thing we're going to talk about is those meteor storms. Now the greatest part of the meteor storms, I mean, listen, the greatest for the people who aren't being affected by it, is you get to see player has been slain by environment because it catches people off guard all of the time. However, did you know that if you follow these meteor storms, an elite will in fact spawn and they can drop very, very good loot. They drop a lot of these cinders, they can drop forgotten souls, legendaries, ancestral legendaries, all of that good stuff. So if you didn't know that, the next time you do see that meteor storm falling down in the Helltide, start moving in a direction, and if it stops happening, move the opposite way and it will in fact lead you to an elite that you can kill if you feel like you are strong enough. So the second thing that's going to be tied into this isn't one of the 5, but it's just a side note. If you haven't noticed this already, clicking on things like the rare, I guess, herbs and plants, specifically the Fiend Rose plants that drop a ton of cinders when you do pick them up, have a massive aggro range. A lot of people don't know this, so before clicking on them, I highly recommend you are ready with your cooldowns up, because if you click on them, you're going to send out in-game some massive AoE alert, letting enemies know outside of your screen specifically that you're there, and they are going to all pounce on you, and if you can handle them, it's just going to be free cinders as well. Same thing applies to the screaming ore nodes that give these cinders, and even the normal and typical nodes of mining and herbing, all of that stuff. Pretty much every interactable item you can see has a very large aggro range, so before clicking on it, make sure you're safe, healthy, and have your cooldowns just in case you do spawn a large pack on you that you're not quite ready for. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be, did you know that those random kind of like weird structures and clickable items that are around you, we're not talking about herbs, we're not talking about the mining nodes, we're talking about the ghastly figures or the things you can destroy, or those, I mean, I forget the names right now, I should know them, but you will see them in the video footage in front of you, that some of them can drop a ton of cinders. But how do you know which ones do? There's actually an indicator. If you see them glowing blood red, that means there is something inside that's going to be worth your time to click onto. So you don't have to run around clicking on every single thing if you don't want to. Look for anything glowing red. I'm not really sure how common they are. I would say they're pretty decently common, but that is one thing you should absolutely be looking for if you run by one on a horse, or if you're on foot and you just happen to see a glowing red interactable object. Stop and take the time to click on it or destroy it, and you will in fact be heavily rewarded. So now that we got the kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if everyone knew what I just said. Maybe it helped a few people out, maybe I didn't. So now let's slowly start getting to things that a lot of players may not know about. So the first thing that I figured out was the consumables tab. A lot of the consumable things that we see here, many players assume they are character specific, despite them being able to be traded. Some of them, however, you cannot trade. So if you are trying to push high nightmares, you know it is a pain to get the currency, and we're just going to go here and find it really quickly. Currency. Sigil powder is a pain when you're trying to push. You need the right nightmare dungeon map if you're trying to farm for 100 like I am, to get the perfect one that doesn't have something that's just going to completely own you the second you step into there. So one thing you can do is you can actually take your sigils from any character you're playing in the game if you're playing more than one, and you can put them into your stash tab, or you can just right click like this. What does this do? This gives you the opportunity to, if you've been farming on your strongest character and you ran out of sigil powder because you were gambling, instead of crafting like a level 10 or a level 15 nightmare sigil, you can hop onto an alt, maybe it's level 70, level 80, you've been playing a lot. You can go ahead, slap it in that storage section, log on to your main champion, take it out of there, and then run it as you would. Saves a ton of time. This is something I didn't know and it helped me significantly, and it's just been much easier. The same thing applies with elixirs. This may be more common knowledge, so I'm kind of going to group these both up, but if you get the elixirs that like resistance you probably won't be needing unless they buff it for some reason, you can just right click them and use them on your alts as XP boosts while they are in fact leveling up. And the last thing that's kind of all under the same window here is aspects. You can take aspects from any character and you can go to the occultist, you can extract the aspect and put it on any alt you want. However, this is something that killed me on my mage specifically, so you need to pay attention to this. If you look at the aspects on the bottom here, you see requires level 64. Now, this is totally my fault, but I'm going to explain to you why there's a bit more to this than what I'm going to say here. If you don't notice the requires level 64 thing, the game is not going to give you a window saying, are you sure you want to do this? So I got a very strong universal aspect, I'm pretty sure it was disobedience, and it required level 98 because that's the piece of gear that I took it off of. So then I had the best pair of pants on my sorceress, and I decided let's slam on these really good disobedience rolls to this so my sorceress is tankier. Upon doing that, the item locked itself to level 98 and I said, oh my god, what did I just do? So I had to run around on a pantsless sorceress, losing even more mitigation because if you know, most pant rolls are damage reduction while whatever, and it's pretty important to have, and if you don't have a spare pair like I didn't, you are in trouble. So I said, okay, hold on, I can fix this. If this is how it works, then surely it works the same way in the opposite roll. So I took a lower disobedience roll, and specifically what I tried is I went to the codex here. I went to defensive, show my class only, when this one's universal, and you can go ahead and find disobedience. This is going to scale directly to your level. And I said, okay, I messed up, GG Blizzard, you got me. I didn't read, this is my fault. I then tried to apply this aspect, which is scaled to the level of my sorceress at the time, which I believe it was 61. And then upon using it, guess what happened? The item was still locked at level 98. So one thing, if I could spare you guys from this, because it was a massive mistake on my end, don't make that mistake. Do not use a higher level requirement aspect for your alts because you cannot reverse it, which makes no sense to me. It really makes no sense to me. If you want to get rid of Abyss rolled aspect, because if it locked the item level too high, you should be able to go into the codex to refix that afterwards. So that was my mistake, and I'm telling you this because I hope none of you make that mistake as well. Now moving on to the next tips. I've noticed this in my Barbarian guide showcases. A lot of comments always ask me whether you're on a console or playing on a PC. Murder, how do you run around without a basic skill, right? I have no basic skill. And usually my basic skill is, let's go to the ability here, and it doesn't matter what class you play, it's a shield. So people are saying, how do you have a shield on your, we can just do it for the showcase here. Why do you have a shield on your movement skill key? How are you moving around? Let me show you how to do this because I've gotten, like I said, hundreds of comments. If it were a few, I probably wouldn't have added it, but just as a side point, hundreds of comments about this. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the controls. Well, first hit escape, options, then go to the controls tab. And here you're going to see combine move, interact, and basic skill slot. By default, this is going to be selected. This means that your movement, interaction, and your basic skill slot is all on one key, which for PC is the left click. I really don't know what it is for the console. You're going to deselect this, and then your basic skill slot is going to stay as the original key that's bound. You're going to have to go to the interact, which is 1. I don't use 1 at all. Move, which is going to be the middle button for me, or a scroll. And then move and interact. This is the one I prefer personally. I have that on spacebar. Why do I have it on spacebar? Because my thumb conveniently rests there. And let me just talk about this quickly, because I also get comments of people like, Murder, are you schizo? What is your AWER? What are you doing? Like, people were getting like uncomfortable seeing that I had AWER instead of the usual QWER on here. So I'm going to challenge you guys really quickly. This is kind of a side rant. Take your hand like this and place it on the keyboard, just in a resting position. One thing you're going to notice is your pinky is your shortest finger of them all. Now, I think about this because I'm weird and I played the piano for like 15 years. So the fact that the pinky's small, I said, why would I strain my hand to move the pinky to the Q key when I can just shift it down and kind of sit back and chill and have it on the A key? That is why I use AWER. It just rests perfectly. And where does my thumb rest perfectly on top of that? You guessed it, the spacebar button. So right now I'm using the spacebar button to move, and that is how I can move without kind of using iron skin. And if I want to use iron skin, it's just a normal basic button. As we can see, we have the shield, GG. Now the next thing I want to talk about is a more, I want to say, advanced tip for people. So this can help a lot of players, especially if you don't know about this. This has to do with animation canceling. I haven't seen a lot of talk about this. I'm sure every single class has really good theory crafters working on something like this, but for Barbarian specifically, this is something that's been talked about since, I don't know, day 2 or 3 because of how clunky some of the playstyle is. So what am I talking about? If I want to use this ability to pull champions in, there's a delay before I can use my other skills to, in fact, do damage. So let's kind of get out of here. Do this. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Hopefully we don't kill them. Okay, they reset. I have to try this again now. So now that I've explained it, there's a delay between when I use this pull-in Steel Grasp, kind of like Mortal Kombat, and my Hammer of the Ancients, which is a smash forward. You're going to see that quite clearly here. So let's do this. Let's pull them in and use it. Now, I didn't one-shot them because I don't have the gear for this build at all, but if you didn't see, there's a delay. So the question is, how do I get rid of the delay to instantly use the ability and remove that second 0.9 second, whatever it is, because once you start doing some tricky content, it's going to matter. So as I'm going to reset these mobs here, we're going to go over how exactly I do this, and I'll kind of explain it before. So the gist of it is I'm going to use the ability, dash forward, and then smash. Now this is going to look weird for a lot of people because the normal interaction of Hammer of the Ancients is a massive AoE from an aspect. So it's going to look like I'm missing my targets. In reality though, I'm speeding up the process of using Hammer of the Ancients by almost 1 second, because when I slam the ground, it's going to be an AoE that's going to apply as the mobs are getting pulled in towards me, and it's just faster front-loaded damage, especially with a vulnerability window with the exploit glyph that only lasts for 3 seconds. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Like I said, it's going to look weird because I don't have the AoE aspect, but let's go ahead and fill our rage bar a bit. This, there, instant. That removes all delay you could ever have. Then we could just use a skill like this here, which is an AoE, it's whatever. But the main point is for skills that are kind of clunky, that even with attack speed have a rather large cast time, you can get rid of this with your evade skill. Evade is going to be the key here. If I didn't mention that, I think I called it a movement skill, which I guess technically it is a movement skill, but the dashing and the animation canceling will be huge for every single class. I'm quite certain there's going to be some type of animation you can find that said, there's a little bit of a delay here. How can I make it faster? Try using that evade skill. Now, one really good counterpoint to something like this would be, do I really want to use my evade skill and put it on cooldown for something like this? Totally class dependent. That is going to be up to you guys for sure here. If you don't think it's worth your time, you can kind of forget about this point, but just know that it exists. Now, if you don't want to use your evade skill, there are other skills that this can apply to. Look at every single dash movement skill you can think of and try using it to animation cancel long animation abilities. But make sure you're careful. If you do this while testing the wrong skill, you could in fact end up canceling the damage of that skill even while casting it. This is something that I only have experience with Barbarians on, so I want to kind of nail down this point for the broad range of players. If you're playing a Necromancer, Sorceress, I'd really be curious actually, because I'm a Diablo 4 enjoyer. I have every class besides a Rogue and World Tier 4. I enjoy them thoroughly. I plan on playing them all in all the many builds thoroughly. So if you know about animation canceling skills that are helpful for other classes, let me know in the comments. I want to know this. I don't want to go through a painful gameplay process on a new class and not know this stuff. So all I can tell you is it works for Barbarian. It works for other classes. Where it's used in other classes, I'm not sure. So whether it's me or other players that are interested, leave it in the comment section. I'm going to read it. I'll respond to it for sure here. And if you're curious, definitely read the comments as well. I'm sure it's going to help all of you out too. Now for the last topic that I want to talk about here. And I'm not sure how rare this is, but I'm going to talk about it anyways, because I'm not going to say it publicly because it's embarrassing and degenerate. Of all the playtime I have on this game so far, I've only seen it once, but it's really cool. So if you're in a nightmare dungeon, maybe it can happen in any dungeon, a special event can happen. It's going to be a chest, it's going to be locked, and you'll see a clip of me with a friend of mine doing it, and I found that he was carrying me on my Necromancer for some quick glyph XP, and I was like, hey, do you know what this is? What is this chest? You go to a chest and it's locked and there's a bunch of gibberish on it with 3 words like, I don't even know, just some made up language. It was actually cool and fun. Now, if you're a competitive gamer and you're looking to just fly through this game, you're going to be like, I don't care about that. It's whatever. Unless it drops me a grandfather or the Harlequin crest helmet, I don't really care. So if you don't care, it's whatever. But I thought it was cool, so I wanted to share it with all of you guys. So the interaction I had with my friend while we were doing this, it was fun. So what happens is there's a chest and there's like kind of like a code. It gives you a huge list of text options. So don't just click on it right away. That's the main thing if you ever see this. Scattered around in a pretty fair proximity to where the chest is located, there are going to be these little glyph tablets, stones, whatever you want to call them. After clicking on it, there's going to be a dialogue text in like a dark orangish color that's going to say one of the words here. Once you find 3 of them, you can then go back to the chest and look for those 3 words in whatever order you see. There should only be one. Like I said, I've only found this once, so I'm not sure what variations there are. I don't know if it was RNG that we got 3 tablets, maybe it was 2 tablets that were possible and we just got lucky with 3. The only issue is the rewards were pretty disappointing, but I don't know what the drop pools look like. I believe I got elixirs, a map, an ancestral piece, and then gold. That's all I got. And then I think my buddy got just a normal rare ancestral piece and some gold. I don't know if he got anything else or if he was looking for something specifically and just instantly clicked it, but a lot of loot kind of auto goes to you, so maybe we got Forgotten Souls and I just didn't see it. Maybe he got a Fiend Rose, Forgotten Souls, and some other cool mats, but I'd be curious to how many people found something like this, because like I said, I've been doing a ton of nightmare dungeons, normal dungeons, farming experience. I mean, if you played early on, the dungeons were busted. You were repeating Ruins of Eridu like 1,000 times. I never saw one of those chests. So we did finally end up seeing it, and like I said, the rewards were kind of not that good, but I'm curious if you guess with only having 1 clue revealed, if you get a higher level reward. So it was really cool, more of a casual thing. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I think small things like this are good for the game. As far as endgame goes and competitiveness, who cares, but I like these little interactions, like the whole, there's a blockade in the road. If you kill it, you just get ambushed by a ton of monsters. That's immersive to me. And if you think it's annoying, there's always, well, I'm not going to say always, there's almost always another path that you can go around and not have a blockade in your way. So you can do that, but I can see how it's annoying and all of that good stuff. So that's going to conclude this video here. Not as short as I wanted to make it, but I thought it was important to give you guys some of the biggest things that I found while playing so far that helped me out dramatically. And I guess the last thing, I mentioned this in another video, but I'm going to say it again. I believe it's in gameplay. If you do not have advanced tooltip information toggled on, hit escape, go to options, go to gameplay, scroll down. You don't even have to scroll down. Find advanced tooltip information and advanced tooltip compare and click both of these on. What does this do? Explain as quickly as possible. If you look next to the aspect I have, it says you deal 76% X in brackets between 40 to 80 is the roll, increased damage to stunned enemies. That is multiplicative damage. That is the highest form of scaling damage in the game. If you don't have this on, you will not see the X and you will not know how much better this is than something that is like this. Berserk Ripping inflicts 20%, 20 to 30 of base damage dealt as additional bleeding damage. There is no X, therefore it is not multiplicative. These things matter. These things are very important. The difference between an X and a non-X multiplier, which is why all of my weapons have X's on them, because they scale way, way better. The same thing applies with paragons and glyphs here. This is how we found out that using an axe for the Whirlwind build was crazy strong. You can see when wielding an axe, you deal 12% X, meaning multiplicative, increased critical strike damage. If this was not an X, and if it was a plus instead, like the top row, you deal plus 41% increased damage. The difference is night and day. 50, 60, 70% of plus increased damage does not come close to a multiplicative pool of crit damage if your crit damage is high enough. It just does not come close. You can do the math yourself, obviously, but you need to know this stuff. This is important for the game, so you're not confused when you look at a guide here. So have that on for sure. Now, plus isn't always bad. For critical strike specifically, multiplicative critical strike is going to be worse than additive critical strike because it is capped at 100. Anything that's capped at 100, you want additive stuff. So as you can see here, Whirlwind's critical strike chances increase by 12% plus 5 to 12 is the range, and then 36% is the cap. There's a plus there, 14 to 36 is the range. So for damage scaling, you want multiplicative. For something like critical strike, you want to see the plus sign. So these things matter. That was a massive thing that I wanted to kind of go over and share with you guys because it's really important for this game and your game knowledge overall. So now that we extended the video even longer than I wanted to, that's going to conclude it. If you like this content, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you all in the next upload.